I woke up on the floor. The feeling of cold, wet concrete on my face and the distinct taste of copper in my mouth worried me. I opened my eyes but saw nothing. It was pitch black. The darkness that surrounded me was so thick it seemed to have texture. I groggily sat up and looked for a wall to lean against. I found none. I cursed aloud. My words seemed to echo. My arms felt heavy as I reached into my pockets. I didn't know if I'd been drugged or was experiencing a hangover. As my hands slid across the cold plastic and glass of my phone, I halfway rejoiced. I pressed the power button and swiped at the screen to unlock it. The dim glow of my phone did not comfort me. As I pointed the screen away from me, I could see that the concrete floor around me was expansive. I couldn't make out any walls, nor could I see the ceiling. My sluggish mind finally came to the conclusion that I should call for help. I dialed 911, only for the phone to return an error. No service. I stumbled to my feet and started forward. I figured I would eventually find a wall, and from there I could attempt to find a door. Each step from my point of origin seemed more difficult than the last. The light from my screen barely seemed to penetrate more than 10 or 15 feet into the darkness. It felt more moist as I moved toward the edge of the room. I stumbled forward a few more steps before tripping over an unseen object and dropping my phone. I had landed on my hands and knees, which in turn shattered the screen of my phone. Without light or anything resembling hope, I wandered through the darkness with my hands in front of me. After several agonizing minutes, I found a wall. Between the exhaust and the lingering feeling of grogginess, I was happy just to have something to lean against as I sat down. The concrete floor was wet and sticky, and the walls, also concrete, were cold to the touch. I began to wonder if I was underground. I walked with my left hand against the concrete wall, as I hoped with each step that the texture on my fingers would change and I would find a door, a window, or anything resembling a light switch. I was moving slowly, but with more confidence since finding the wall. With one hand in front of me and the other grazing the wall, I finally found a corner. I figured it was as good a place as any to stop and rest. It was around that time that I heard him for the first time. "Hello?" a male voice said from somewhere in the darkness. "Is anyone there? Where am I?" For half a moment I considered answering him, but then it occurred to me. I had no idea how I ended up there. He could very well have been the one who brought me to this place. I sat silently as I listened to him loudly shuffle about and call out for help. His voice seemed to be getting closer. I stood as best as I could and continued along the new wall. I made it a few paces before my hand bumped into something cold and metal. As I probed this object with both hands, I concluded that it was a stairwell of some kind. I felt around for a moment before climbing onto it. The stairs creaked as I made my ascent. I could hear the voice below me. "I can hear you moving. Why did you bring me here? What did I do?" I must have been near the top of the stairs because As I was about to take another step, my shin hit a metal bar. I put my hands out in front of me and felt a guardrail. With my right hand on the guardrail, I made my way forward for a few steps before planting my extended hand on what felt like wood. I fumbled around for a doorknob. Just as I clumsily opened the door, I heard the unknown individual making his first steps up the stairwell. I fumbled around for a light switch. The first few moments of light made my brain hurt. I closed them just to stop the pain. As the room slowly came into focus, I began to realize where I was. It was one of those offices you found in warehouses that was suspended from the ceiling. There were various switches for turning on other lights. One by one, I turned on all the lights in the place, and I was so excited by the prospect of light that I'd all but forgotten about the unknown individual from before. As I peered out onto the floor, my jaw dropped. It looked like the entire floor was coated in a thick pool of blood. I looked around to see the dried blood on my hands and clothing. Upon gazing upon the nearly 30-foot tall concrete walls and the steel support beams that seemed to hold a concrete ceiling, I was taken aback. It seemed that the only exit was a ladder on the other side of this massive room. At that moment, he came through the door. He couldn't have been more than 14 or 15, but he was covered from head to toe in blood and holding a metal bar in his hand. The look in his eyes was devilish. Whether he was just another victim or a crazed madman, I'll never know. He lunged at me with the metal bar and I sidestepped him in time to push him through the open window. He fell 2 stories and landed face down on the walkway. As I made my way back down the metal stairs, my eyes never left his body. I'm ashamed to admit that I gave him a kick in the ribs just to make sure he was dead. I grabbed the metal bar and made my way across the floor. I wandered over to where I dropped my phone and realized the object I tripped over was yet another resident of the massive room. She seemed to be sleeping. I pushed on her shoulder and tried to wake her, but she seemed unfazed by it. Her breathing was shallow. I rolled her on her side and searched through her pockets to find a cigarette lighter and a pack of cigarettes. I helped myself to a cigarette and tapped her on the shoulder a few times before deciding it was best to make my way towards the ladder. The events of the past couple hours was taking its toll on me. I was thirsty, fatigued, and still incredibly groggy. I struggled to make it up the ladder, but at about 20 feet up, my arms and legs started feeling like jello. After 5 more rungs, I felt like battery acid was pumping through my veins. I barely had the strength to hold on when I reached the top. As I pushed the hatch open, I slipped and almost fell to my death, and I panicked as my hand began slipping from the rung, only to swing my arm forward and grab a lower rung. After taking a few moments to steady myself, I used what was left of that adrenaline rush to push myself up and out of this massive room. The hatch slammed closed as I rolled on my back to rest. I lit a cigarette and started laughing. This room was dark, as the previous one had been. From somewhere in the darkness, I heard a familiar male voice say, "Hello? Is someone there?"